Alexandre First, a PhD from France, attached to the LIA and INRIA. I did my master degree in Paris 6, university in Paris, and my graduation was in Marseille in mathematics. About my master was about optimization, game theory, and control theory.
I'm Ilaria Brunetti. I'm a PhD student in Maestro group of INRIA, Sofia and Tripolis, and I'm registered as a PhD student in Avignon University. I have a master's degree in mathematics. I studied in Bologna University in Italy, and I'm now working with Professor Eitan Altman on dynamics game and evolutionary game theory.
Hello, I'm Lucio Piovani from Imperial College. I'm doing a PhD. I'm in my final year of my PhD at Imperial College. I come from Rome and of course live in London. I have my background. I have an undergraduate degree in physics and a postgraduate degree in theoretical physics, and that's where I started knowing and studying complex systems. And immediately, I felt very fascinated by that field, and so started moving towards them with my thesis, and then looked for a PhD in the area, in the vast area of complex systems, and that's how I ended up at Imperial.
My name is Jonathan Portilla. I'm from Venezuela. I'm a PhD student from INRIA and Avignon University. I work in social network analysis, especially on the internet. In Venezuela, I have my diploma in computer science. I work while 4 years in one IT company as an IT consultant. I worked in telecommunication companies, and later I come in France to complete my education, and now I do my PhD in the 3rd years.
My name is Gideon Block. I am a PhD student in the Technion and a student of Aria Lorda. So I'm originally from Amsterdam, the Netherlands, and that's also where I did my bachelor's degree in TU Delft. So after my bachelor's, I moved to Israel and came here for my master's in Technion, and that's where I'm pursuing my PhD at the moment.
I am Cédric Richier. I am a 3rd year PhD student in Avignon, LIA, and I'm working on the propagation of information in social network in general. I am a former student in mathematics, so I have a 4th year degree in mathematics, and then I come to computer science, and I achieved a master degree in computer science, and now I'm doing my PhD. Actually, when I was a student in math, I always have been very impressed by what my professor were doing on the blackboard, and I always dream about scientific things. Okay, it was a dream. I was younger. When I came into the computer science, I had the opportunity to do a PhD, and in some way it was a way to achieve my dream, to do research. So why research? Because for me, the research field is to be to face some new problems which have not been studied until now. And so you have to propose new things, and you have to inspire yourself from what have been done yet. So this is somehow it's different from engineering, for example. In engineering, you have to apply some method that you have learned. In research, you have to build the methods, and this is what I like.
Why did you choose to do research? It's these questions aren't too easy, but I'll try to explain them or approximate the explanation. I think the reason I chose research is because research comes down to the fundamentals. And since I like problem solving, you can say, you really, to understand the problem, you really have to go down to the fundamentals and see what the building blocks are. And then, of course, the next step is to see, well, what can we add to that, right? If you want to try something new, so you have to really start at the beginning, start at the basic, and that's what research gives you, an option to push forward to something new while understanding kind of the entire mechanism. So that attracted me, and that's probably the reason why I do research.
I've chosen to do research, to start my career with research, because I think is the best way to apply our knowledge, the knowledge acquired during the university studies, and to go deeper into that knowledge, and to collaborate with people with different backgrounds and put different way of seeing things together. So I think it's very rich and interesting work.
So I chose to do research because I enjoy it. I've always enjoyed it. When I was during my master's, I did a few research projects as an exam, and I always had a lot of fun, especially in the type of approach that's typical of complex systems. So it's modeling and then testing your hypothesis numerically, and analytically and then numerically. That's something I'm actually it's a lot of fun for me. And then because it's studying and putting order to thoughts is something I enjoy doing. And so yes, these are probably the main reasons why I chose to do research, and why I think I'll continue doing research for my life.
I decided to go to the research because I believe this one of the job where you can always progress, learn new things, try to improve science. This is the main reason that I think that I want to do research.
It's pretty by chance, because normally when I arrive in France, I only come to 1 year, and later I have the opportunity to make one master degree, and later you propose me to make a PhD. And for me, it's an opportunity to have one idea to compare to work in companies and to know scientific work.
I've decided to pursue a PhD in academia because I think that academia is a very interesting environment, very stimulating, and it allows you to collaborate with people from all over the world and from different backgrounds, and it allows you also to travel a lot. So it's it's an interesting exchange, cultural speaking and scientifically speaking.
I think the question should be, what is the added value of pursuing a PhD degree versus working somewhere for the same time?
Yeah, sure.
And I would say, in the beginning, I had to ask these questions myself as well. To do a PhD opens a lot of options, which means that, let's say, if we're comparing it with working, when you're working in a company, mostly you'll have a task and you'll go into a certain direction, and your mind is kind of set on what has to be done. In a PhD, you have the freedom, I would say, to explore different options, to really open your mind, take away the assumptions, take away what has to be done because someone tells you to do that. And you can really prove the fundamentals. You can prove if something is true or find a reason why it's not. So again, to really understand the basics of things, you have to kind of open your mind. And with that, of course, there's a whole world that comes to research and academia, and I would say that that very much attracted me as well.
So after the third year, being at the third and final year of my PhD, I actually start seeing probably what's good and bad of doing a PhD. Probably I'll have a better overview of it in a year or two when it's finished. But so the added value, I'd say, is the good things of doing a PhD is that you learn that. You're involved in the process of that then leads to the formulation of theories and to books, and you start understanding the point of view of those people who actually wrote the books and the books I've studied them, in the past, and in some way that feeling of absolute truth and not an fallacy that before I had when I looked at these things went away, because I understand how things can be wrong and how things are developed, and that's it's been a nice feeling, actually. I'm not saying that, of course, that books are false or that they're not true, but it's just I feel now I understand better how things are developed in science, of course. So, and another thing I really value of doing a PhD is that you are actually forced to you're alone, and there's no one really that can tell you what to do and what's truth and where to look, because you're the one that knows best on what's your specific subject. So there's an absence of a guide. Your supervisor helps you, and you can speak to other people, but it's up to you to build up all the information you need and to put the puzzle. And it's very frustrating at times, incredibly frustrating, and it's very, very difficult. And sometimes I said, okay, that's it. I don't want to. It's over. I had enough of this. But then there's those times where you actually see how things slowly take a form, and that's an amazing feeling. Sensation is just a kick of enthusiasm you get that very rarely happens in other places. So and you know that's something you've built by yourself. So that's that maybe it's the best thing of a PhD is when you actually start understanding what you're doing, and you see the results that starts coming, and that's amazing. It's worth it.
The thing is, you become an expert. In PhD, you need to go deep in details about one topic during 3 years. And also in PhD, you need to read a lot of books. You need to finally you are alone in PhD and you learn how to become independent. I think it's good quality. Also in company.
Compared in industry is in when you make research, you have freedom. You are free to choice. You are free to develop new ideas. And in companies, normally you have the time to do something, and you have the rules to do that too.
When you're doing PhD, you spend 3 years to specialize in one specific topic, and you have to go very deep in the analysis, and also sometimes and often you are alone, and so you have to improve your autonomy. So at the end of your PhD, you are autonomous, and I think this is something very interesting for the industries, because with a good autonomy in industry, you can, when working with other people, you can bring new ideas, and so that improves your creativity.
So, complex systems, I think, can be defined in many ways. I would say, the way I view at it, which is not the way that everyone views at it, I see it as a network, because I am in the research of computer networks. So every time someone says, well, a complex system, in my mind, there's a complex network. So a network that can behave in a complex manner, which is not a systematic, simple, let's say, lattice or anything like that, but it becomes very complex and unpredictable. That's how I would see a complex system. Or in my case, when I do game theory, I'll go on basically on number 5 already of the questions. Game theory says it's the study of decision-making of rational users. And when you apply game theory to a network, then I would say that the network doesn't have to be complex in its topology, but the strategy, decision-making of all of the users can be complex. So that together might, or I would define as a complex network.
Complex systems are everywhere. For instance, social networks are complex systems. Communication network, biological network are complex systems. And for instance, one of the main questions in a communications network is how to distribute the flow of information across the network. Another example in social network is to find which node is the most influential.
So what are complex systems? Complex systems, there's I think a book definition of what a complex system is, but so what is complexity? So complexity is a wonderful thing, and it's the emergence of properties that you cannot see at a lower scale. So it's when more is different. So when quantitative becomes qualitative, and it's when you're not able to predict. You can't predict what will happen at a larger scale by looking at a lower scale, and this is incredibly fascinating, of course, because it is it's non-trivial, non-linear. It's very, very interesting to see how these properties emerge while the size of the system grows. And so this is a general, probably imprecise definition of a complex system, but you can see this type of phenomenon to happen in many different fields, not typically studied by physics, by biology.
Can you give an example of a complex system?
Yes. An example of a complex system can be a crowd moving, which obeys sort of different rules, completely different rules with respect to a few people moving together. Or I actually did my thesis in my master thesis in the movement of flocks of birds. So that's another. So you see the emergence of these incredibly ordered structures in the coordinated movement by local interactions, and so that's another example: flocks of birds, or probably the ecological system is a complex system. Its dynamics is thought to be intermittent, so it goes under the name of punctuated equilibrium, and it's something that you cannot actually tell by looking at the system at a generation scale, but you have to have an evolutionary perspective to see it. The brain is another famously cited complex system.
For me, a complex system is a system where the elements, knowing the elements, cannot give you the knowledge of what is the system. It's not sufficient, okay? Because there is complex interaction between elements, and only knowing elements by elements cannot explain all the system. For me, this is what is a complex system. So there are many examples in the nature. For example, when you're looking in the sky and you see birds, clusters of birds that move in the sky, you can tell that it is a complex system when the way that they are moving is they move like a own entity, but there are many entities. And if you know the rules that define each individual in the group, you cannot infer the rule that define the whole group. Okay, this is an example. And of course, in our all-day life, we are next to a lot of complex systems. For example, the whole web can be seen as a complex system. All social networks are complex systems. Human networks. In economy, also you can see the economy as a complex system, and so on. You have a lot of examples.
As what is game theory? As I said, and I think this is the Wikipedia definition. You can check this up if it's true. But it is a study of decision making by rational entities, and which means that instead of looking at when we apply this to complex systems, instead of looking at the optimization of a system from above, we understand it to be a system in which different entities have different goals and they don't care about each other, and then their strategy or their decision influences the others. So that's game theory then applied to a complex network.
Okay.
And we study the outcomes of such games and what happens to the network, and how the administrator or the network builder, creator should take that into account.
So who are those who take the decisions and don't care about each other?
So this could be, I define it very abstractly. So maybe a concrete case would say we have ISPs, internet service providers. They have the infrastructure of the network, and we have content providers that have to flow data over a network. Now each content provider wants to get as much data in the best links on that network, and then they're interfering with each other, and that creates a congestion in the network. And from that, let's say we can have a congestion game, because every content provider has a strategy which links it can send his data on. and these strategies interfere with each other. And basically, the person that builds the network also has to keep in mind at a certain point that these people will be in competition with each other, the content providers. So while creating a network, you should have that in mind in order to, with the assumption of competition, making the system as optimal as possible.
In my case, I work more on a specific part of game theory, which is called non-cooperative game theory. And in non-cooperative game theory is an extension of optimization, where instead of the case where there's just one agent try to minimize his cost function, his delay, for example, in communication network, in game theory, there is many agents try to optimize their own cost function. And there is a famous equilibrium, there is a famous concept used in game theory which is called Nash equilibrium. Nash is a famous scientific that receives the Nobel Prize. And there is also concept related to the Nash equilibrium, like Wardrop equilibrium, when you have a lot of users, Stackelberg equilibrium, where the decision, where one agent have more information than the other, and of course also concept.
Game theory is a very powerful mathematical structure which allows to model all those situations in which we have different players, so a certain number of individuals. Usually we deal with selfish individuals, so individuals maximizing their so-called utility, so a function representing their wellness somehow, knowing that they know these individuals, they know that they are surrounded by other individuals doing the same, so we are in an interacting scenario. And so we try to find the so-called equilibrium, which is a situation which satisfy all the individuals.
Most of my work deals with social network, propagation of content in social network or visibility in social network. And a social network is a complex network. This is why my work is related to complex network.
And how is it related to game theory?
In social network, we assume in my work, and I think this is also a good assumption, that everyone wants to be as much as visible as possible. My work is related to game theory because in social network, each agent tries to maximize his own visibility, his own popularity. This is why the concept of game appears.
I've been mainly working on evolutionary game theory, which is a particular branch of game theory originally developed to model the biological evolution. So instead of considering a scenario with a finite number of agents, of players, we deal with populations of individuals. So the point of view is slightly different, and also the goal of the model is slightly different, but the idea is always the same, of finding the understanding which is the equilibrium point reached by the population. My work is related with Congas because evolutionary game theory can be seen as a way to approach complex systems. First of all, because it deals with large populations of individuals which interacts. So it's in complex systems are a system of large number of interacting elements. So we have kind of the same scenario. So evolutionary game theory adds to a complex system the decision-making framework. So it brings these aspects of game into the complex systems.
Specifically, I'm working on YouTube, as you said, and I try to explain or to describe with mathematic models the process of dissemination of the contents in YouTube. More specifically, actually, I am working on explaining or describing the evolution of the popularity of videos on YouTube. And for that, I use some models from the biology and why it is or how it is related to complex systems. This is a good question. As I said before, we can see YouTube. YouTube is a special social network, and so indeed this is a complex system. But YouTube is very specific because in YouTube you have users, and so you have the network of the users. Users are interacting each others, and you have videos. Okay, and videos have also some interaction between themselves. Some videos are related to other videos, and the challenge is to make the links between the networks, the network of the users and the network of the videos, and maybe knowing the topology of the users can explain or give some clues on how the videos are propagating in YouTube. And in that sense, this is somehow a complex system.
My work mainly is on routing games, in the non-cooperative sense and the cooperative sense. So I'll explain that in a little bit. Basically, it says, as I said before, we have an infrastructure of a network, and we have certain users. The infrastructure can be an ISP, and the user could be content providers. Now, these content providers have to send something from their source in California to their destination in Amsterdam. And while going from the source to destination, they go through many links. So through New York, through all these places. Maybe through China, actually, they go the other way around. Now, of course, these content providers, Netflix, Google, Microsoft, they're all in competition. So it could be that Google finds an amazing way to route their Hangout, Google Plus data. However, this interferes with Skype data. Because when everyone's trying to get for the best links in the system, that link gets congested. Finally, after the best replying or repeating to each other, they might enter a certain state where it's not worthwhile for anyone to go out of that state, which is in game theory defined as a Nash equilibrium. Now, what I am doing at this moment is researching how bad these Nash equilibria can be. So if everyone thinks of themselves only and doesn't care about the entire system, how bad can that be for the system? With that, I think that is how my work relates to complex systems, because it's not just a network where it's easily optimized, but the decision makers make that system insanely complex. That's also how my work relates to game theory. But maybe to add to that, I also research the opportunity for users to cooperate. So users have the opportunity to sit around a table, much like this one, and decide that they are willing to adopt a strategy that is better for themselves because they cooperate with each other. So they're still in competition, but they can talk to each other. So they still only care about themselves, but they can talk with each other. And then again, we research how much better the system can become because of that. So that is the cooperative game theory side.
I have one small question.
Go ahead.
Especially for you. What does physics have to do with biological systems or with game theory?
So-
is it marginal to physics, or is it main field in physics what you're doing?
So,
here?
well, there is a debate, I think, an internal debate among physicists. Some say, I mean, my professor at La Sapienza, where I graduated, he believes that physics nowadays, with a few exceptions, which can be quantum gravity and particle physics, which are two big fields, but the physics of today is biology, economy, and neuroscience, genetics, this kind of things. I mean, because the approach physics had now it's been exported to these fields, and it's with some results. I mean, and so how do they relate? Well,
the tools, maybe.
the tools used and developed, especially in statistical mechanics. So to explain thermodynamics and how heat is exchanged and all those things apparently work even for other type of systems, which are not strictly physical. So yes, the tools.
I am a very curious guy, and I am interested in everything that people do in Congas. But in particular, I'm interested in what Alexandre does. What Alexandre does, because he works on social network and he uses game theory approaches, and I think we can do something together, merging game theoretical approaches and epidemics approaches. Maybe we can do something together. But he is a student too, and I'm also interested with other people. I liked the presentation of Imperial College, the tangled nature model. I don't understand everything in that, but I think it is a very good thing. And maybe when the book will be produced, maybe I can refer to the book to understand deeply what they are talking about.
Do you have contacts with other members or other participants in Congas?
Yeah, I've worked with the team of CreatNet, the Great Net team in Trento. We work on game theory applied to epidemic and also social network. And after, there is also some relation of my work with the team of the University of Pisa, because they use routing game applied to internet network. And we have discussed about this because I know the tools and they know the application, and we try to discuss of some idea. And also my work is related to the work of in Technion, because they work on the extension of the mathematical theory of routing game, and I'm using routing game in a social network.
Did you actually publish with others?
I publish with the team of CreatNet.
Thanks to Conga's project, I collaborated with Professor Ezekiel Ayel and Professor Rashid El-Azouzi of Avignon University, both professor in Avignon University. And with Professor Ayel, I worked on MDP, which are with Professor Ayel, I worked on MDEG, so micro decision evolutionary game, which is a very interesting scenario which brings together the theory of macro decision processes and the evolutionary game theory. We studied a particular game in which we focused on the evolution of the states of individuals together with the evolution of strategies in the population. With Professor Elazouzi, we worked on evolutionary game theory focusing on the player. So instead of considering individual players, we described the scenario in which the individuals interact, but the player is a group in the sense that these individuals maximize the utility of a group they belong to.
How do I directly relate to others? I would say everyone has their thing. My thing would be routing games. I would say more the game theory part, because we're working on package 4. Then our results that come from our research could be related to or made into a certain model that can be applied to other partners' situations as well. I know that as far as I know, I'm the only one working at specifically routing games here, but there's network formation games, there's also evolutionary game theory. So these basically, not the specific problem is not exactly the same, but the results and methodologies that are used can be applied in both areas.
So how do I relate to other partners in the Congress projects? This is a hard question because they're very kind and we get along very well, and I visited most of them, and all the other Congress partners come from different backgrounds and have different approaches to problem, and that's probably the most interesting thing for me in this experience, because I've been forced to change my perspective in order to understand the others, and probably the others have to do the same thing. And this is, I think, essential in order to do research, because if you by always speaking and confronting yourself with people that come from your tiny niche, you end up probably becoming too rigid and thinking only in that way, thinking that's the only way. This type of attitude has happened in science so much. And for me, this is I cannot do it, because if I don't make an effort to change my perspective, I don't understand. And this change of perspective is so necessary and so useful for me, because then you see that there are great results obtained with these other approaches, and so I think that I relate to the other partners with great curiosity and great fascination, and I take this possibility just to absorb and to remember not to stabilize too much on one mental framework.
Thanks to my PhD, I had the opportunity to travel a lot, to participate to many interesting conferences related to the subject of my thesis, but also to more wide world of complex systems and game theory in general. I've traveled both in Europe and abroad, in India, in the States, and I'm now just back from Sydney, where I had the opportunity to wanted to do an internship with Macquarie University, working with Vladimir Gaisgary. One of the main conference I've participated to, and where I presented my work. Let's say that the closest to my subject was the Stony Brook conference on game theory last year in Long Island. It has been a very interesting experience where I also met John Nash. International conferences are one of the most important moments, I think, in the PhD life, because both for when you present, it's a challenge to you have a limited amount of time in which you need to explain your work to a community which is not necessarily the community you belong to. So it's quite stimulating and quite challenging. Conferences are also interesting as a listener. So when you listen at the other researcher works, you can get many ideas for your research, and also just widen your knowledge about the scientific scenario at that time. So for me, it's one of the really one of the most important and interesting moments in my career.
And so the next question is: did you participate in conferences related to your research? And the answer is I have. I went to a conference called ECCS, which is European Conference of Complex Systems, and that was actually very interesting, very interesting. And that's where I realized how vast and broad this field is, and it was very. I mean, I had the possibility of meeting many people, and on the other side, it's even nice sometimes to meet people that have had exactly your problems and have tried to solve them in a similar way, using similar tools, the ones I was using, but maybe succeeding instead of failing like I did. And so that's been a unique opportunity as well.
Did you participate in conferences related to your research? Indeed, I did. It's a lot of fun. I would recommend it. These range from Infocom to conferences here in Israel on networking, and conferences to game theory. I've also joined the Congas group in Delft, in the technical university there. So yeah, I've been. I'm always ready and open to go to more conferences. Maybe you have a good idea, then I'm always open for that.
I participate to conferences related to my research. For instance, I participate to NEGECOP, one of the best conferences about game theory applied to network. And I really enjoy this conference because most of the people work on the same thing as me. Not exactly game theory apply to social network, but game theory apply to network, and finally it's really good for the discussion and to improve idea. Also, I participate to the networking conference, IFP networking, and in this case it's not just about game theory but more about all the networking and in this case, it was interesting to see all the topic in this conference.
I really liked the working with different professors. So to the fact that thanks to this European project, I could collaborate with people other than my thesis director because I've been able to deal with slightly different subjects, and also to experience a different way to approach a certain issue.
What are the other activities in Congas that attracted your interest the most? So 10 to 13 are going to be tough here, these questions. I would say, so in other things in Congas, what they're talking about a lot is the spread of epidemics. And this seems very unrelated to game theory in a sense, because it's hard to find a decision maker. Sometimes you'll say, well, there's game theory in the fact that every node in the epidemics can decide what to do for protect himself from the epidemic or not. It would be also nice to see how other things in game theory can be applied.
What are other activities of Congress that attracted your attention?
There is one in particular, the one done by the University of Delft about epidemic, because they study how really propagate the epidemic on the network, and not just an approximation as I do. And this is perhaps the work that I really prefer in Congas.
Meetings, we had so many now, and those have been always a lot of fun. But apart from that, I had the possibility not only to even to visit places, just to confront and to do research, like Pisa, been to Trento, and that was again, it was very tiring, but those were great experiences. I mean, normal PhD students don't have the possibility to travel that much and to confront themselves so much. So I think I've been incredibly lucky to end up in a project which is so widespread and that involves so many different countries, institutions. I mean, my colleagues tend to stay in London and sometimes move for conferences, while I'm around every 3 or 4 months. And that is, I think that I've been incredibly lucky. I mean, and it's something that actually sharpened many of my skills that weren't there. So, yeah, I'd say that, probably.
When you finish the PhD, I think nothing is finished yet. Of course. And so somehow you are an expert on your topic, but you can always go further. And there are a lot of things to do, especially in social network. We are working on something that interests we are working on something that interests everyone. Everybody uses social networks every day. Everybody has a Facebook account or are going to YouTube and so on. And understanding how the social networks are, how can we describe them? How can we play with them? How can we leverage some things to use them? I think this is something very new, and we have a lot of things to do in this area. So yes, I want to pursue in this way, in the way of the social network. So it is related to Congas, of course.
Well, will you pursue working in teams related to Congas? Yes. After I graduate, yes, definitely yes. I mean, epidemics, network theory, and these things are aspects that really interest me a lot. And for sure, I mean, I will go on doing that.
For sure, I will pursue in social network, in complex network and game, but I would like also to explore new fields like machine learning and more precisely bandit, because I think now I want to improve myself in this new field. My main topic will always be game theory applied to network, but I want to open my mind during 2 years or 3 years about machine learning.
So it says, what's your opinion on being involved in a European project? I'm not sure how people can have different opinions on that. I think it is, I think the question is more, how do you like the fact that different partners come and we all sit together? I think it's very useful, actually. I think it's useful that that we get to brainstorm my ideas. I get to see different ideas coming from a completely different perspective, that if I would have done research here in my university, then I wouldn't get these ideas or be I wouldn't say influenced, but basically open to different views. And as an example, I'd already talked about academics. I think that people talk about that here a lot, and I'm definitely interested in how that could maybe work with a type of research that I'm doing. Still thinking about that. So I very much enjoy it.
Being involved in a European project is a good way to meet people from all over the world, and with good universities, because the partner in Congress specifically are very well-known partners. I think about Delft University, Technion in Israel, Imperial College in London, and we at UAPV ELIA are a smaller partner, but I think have some relationship with those partners in the context of the Congress project is a very good thing for a student, a PhD student. Because you have access, you can discuss with very good people who have very intelligent ideas and a very wide knowledge of what they are doing, and this is very good for the experience.
The European project Congas is not my sponsor, in the sense that I'm working I'm paid for INRIA, but still it allowed me to participate to their regular meetings all around Europe, and so this has been even more interesting than a conference in a certain sense, because we had a meeting consists in a part of presentations of works of the other universities, so you can really get into contact with the other European university work. And at the same time, there's a part of discussion, so which goes very deep into the different subjects.
Okay, the first thing, the main thing I would recommend is to know exactly what have been done yet on the topic. And for that, you have to know all the papers, the reference papers. And for that, you can read my paper, because in my paper, at the end of it, there are all the good references. And also, maybe my paper can be a good reference too, but first of all, you have to read that, so that you can have an overview what you can do. You would be aware of the state of about the state of the art, and then this is a good starting point to begin to have ideas or to develop some mechanisms. Of course, first you have to fix an objective, and then try things. You have to try. It's very important. you can fail, but when you are failing, you learn a lot of things. So to fail is a good thing in research, and then you can improve, learn about your failures, and someday you will find something good.
Thank you.
This is a good advice.
So a PhD, I think, is a particular choice. Is not a job as the others is. So it requires, first of all, a big amount of passion, of discipline, and you need to be ready to work alone. Which I think it was the most difficult things for me. You spend a lot of time alone, so you need to motivate yourself. And another important thing, which really can change your PhD life, is where you do your PhD. I mean, not geographically speaking, but I think that you need to choose a good research institute or a good university, so that you have the possibility to collaborate with good professor, and to collaborate with possibly an European project, and to be open to travel and participate in conferences.
I would recommend. Okay, I would maybe say do a lot of related work research. You know, I fell through there a few times that I thought, oh, this is great, and then basically it was already done. Do things that you can concretely, you know that there is something to be done about. Sometimes it happened that I knew that there was a problem, and then just before I solved it, someone else solved it. These are the things that I would say try to avoid, but you know, have a good time also. That's important, which I am. I'd say overall, it's a good place to be.
Only the passion.
Passion.
And to be organized and don't. And if you feel lost, it's not a problem. It's really the half of time PhD.
Yeah.